Hello everyone, this is Greg from ChemCore. In this video, we're going to be discussing the amines and nitriles worksheet. If you haven't seen this worksheet, it's in the description below. If you haven't seen the answer key, it's also in the description below. And if you haven't seen the topic video on these concepts, also in the description below. And I really suggest you watch that topic video just to make sure that you're familiar with yourself. I make them quick on purpose, so it's really only going to take a couple minutes out of your life. This worksheet is going to combine the functional group topics that we learned most recently, so the amines and nitriles, as well as some of the functional groups that we learned before. So the carbonyl functional groups, as well as amides, and alcohols, ethers, alkyl halides, and then your hydrocarbon functional groups. Now, in the last video, in the last explainer video, I kind of mentioned that we talked about amides before. Now, amides, I kind of consider carbonyls and then the nitrogen-containing compounds like a Venn diagram, and you have that overlap in the middle. And that overlap in the middle is your amides. Amides do contain a carbonyl. They are also nitrogen-containing compounds. And so I purposely put them in the last video. I really was debating putting them into this one, but I think putting them in the last one kind of makes it more clear and kind of ties together the concepts of carbonyls better. In this video, we're going to be testing all of the groups together. So this is the last two functional groups that we discuss. And all we really have to do through these problems is just identify the functional group present. And so in the first problem, I really just see a nitrogen and nothing else going on around it. And so I know that it's an amine. Again, there's a couple functional groups in which I really kind of tell you guys check what is going on as well as what's going on around it. That includes ethers, because if you have a carbonyl next to it, it's no longer an ether. Definitely also includes amines, because if you have a carbonyl next to an amine, it's no longer an amine, now it's an amide. And it also includes aldehydes and ketones, because if you have that carbonyl next to it, now it's an ester. And so your eyes will go toward the thing that pops out at you most, but please check the surroundings as well. In the next problem, I see this triple bonded nitrogen and a carbon at the end, so I know it's carbon triple bonded to nitrogen, so I know it's a nitrile. And so, I mean, for our purposes, whenever you see a triple bonded nitrogen to a carbon, you could just call it a nitrile. You really don't have to worry about what else is going on in the molecule, unless you have other functional groups. In the next problem, I see these two oxygens, and so I know it's either an ester or a carboxylic acid, but this R group connected to that oxygen makes it an ester. The next problem is actually the opposite. I see these two oxygens, and so I know it's either an ester or a carboxylic acid, but this hydroxyl, this H, makes it a carboxylic acid. And then the next problem, I see this carbonyl oxygen, and the carbonyl carbon is also bonded to a nitrogen. And so I know that this is an amide. The last problem on this page, I see this hydroxyl that is bonded to an sp3 hybridized carbon. So I know it's an alcohol. The next couple problems, I see bromine, which is a halogen, bonded to an sp3 hybridized carbon. So I know that this is an alkyl halide. And then the next problem, I see this carbonyl oxygen. There's nothing going on around it. So I know it's either an aldehyde or a ketone, but it's surrounded by carbons. The key goes in the middle of the lock. I know it is a ketone. And then the next problem, I see this carbonyl oxygen and nothing going on around it. So I know it's either an aldehyde or a ketone. It is at the end of a carbon chain. And so I know that it is an aldehyde. And the next problem, I see this nitrogen. There's no carbonyl next to it, so I know it's an amine. If there was a carbonyl, it would be an amide. And the next couple problems on this page, I see this triple bond, and the whole molecule is a hydrocarbon, and all I see is a triple bond, so I know that it's an alkyne. The next problem, however, also a hydrocarbon, but instead there's a double bond. So I know that it's an alkene. And then the next problem, I see this oxygen kind of in the middle of a carbon chain. So I know it's an ether. And the last problem on this page, I see this nitrogen that is triple bonded to a carbon. So I know it is a nitrile. In the next problem, last problems that we have to fill in on this worksheet, I see these two oxygens. So I know it's either an ester or a carboxylic acid, but this R group makes it an ester. The next problem, again, I see these two oxygens, so I know it's either an ester or a carboxylic acid, but this hydroxyl group makes it a carboxylic acid. And so I want you guys to see that there's a huge chain kind of connected to the carbonyl carbon that doesn't make it any other functional group. It's still a carboxylic acid. The next problem, I see this oxygen, and it's a carbonyl, but the carbonyl carbon is also bonded to a nitrogen. And so I know it's an amide. And the last fill-in question, I see this carbonyl oxygen. There's nothing going on around it. It is bonded at the end of the chain, and so I know it's an aldehyde. The rest of this worksheet is going to have some multiple choice. I think that's pretty good practice. Which alkyl groups make up the following ether? And so first, it's kind of useful to identify that this is our ether, right? And what alkyl groups, we're pretty much asking what is on each side. So what is this? And then what is this? And so the one on the left has 2 carbons. And so from earlier in this chapter, you should know that we give the prefix eth. While on the right side, we have this benzene ring. And whenever you see a benzene ring, you should either be thinking phenyl or benzyl. Now, since this carbon that the benzene ring is attached to is completely empty, we can call this a benzyl group. And so our answer choice should be C, ethyl and benzyl. What alkyl groups make up the following ketone? Well, first we have to identify that this is the ketone. And so we're pretty much asking what is the alkyl chain on the left and what is the alkyl chain on the right. And so on the left, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. And so from earlier in this unit, you should know that we give the prefix hex to 6 carbons. While on the right, I see this phenyl, right, pH. But, trick question, they're also giving you this empty carbon. And so even though they told you phenyl, it is a benzyl group because of that empty carbon. This is actually a similar trick question that we had in one of the worksheets earlier, I think in the hydrocarbon or the phenyl versus benzyl video. And so this is a benzyl group. And so our answer choice should be C. So this concludes our worksheet on the amines and nitriles video. And I'd like to congratulate you. You have finally learned all of the functional groups. This is a topic that is kind of, you kind of have to commit it to memory. I really suggest practicing, doing these worksheets over again, really just drilling it over and over and over again. I really kind of don't suggest doing flashcards because they're going to try to give you these problems in a way that might make it hard to memorize if you just kind of memorize the general formula. I really suggest practicing to memorize, right? By practicing, you will memorize these concepts and you will memorize these functional groups and you'll be better off with it. And so in the next video, we're actually going to talk about classifications and how we can classify different types of functional groups. And so I'll see you guys in the next video.